These beautiful things that I've got. Please don't take.
Well, good morning, friends. Welcome to The Well. If we haven't had a chance to meet, my name is Danny. I'm one of the pastors here. I'll add my welcome on top of Alex's and those you received as you walked in. Just so glad you're here. And as Alex alluded to, today is Palm Sunday, a Sunday within the kind of trajectory of the lead up to Easter that sets the scene for Jesus rolling into Jerusalem. As Alex said, the triumphal entry is what it's often referred to as he's going into Jerusalem, as he's preparing to head to the cross for his crucifixion. And it is one of the ultimate shifts in expectations. Like, have you ever been in one of those moments where you expected something to go a certain way? Like, it is ultimately one of those. Not only for Jesus's disciples, the scripture tells us that for this one, it says that they didn't really know what was happening till after Jesus' death. So that means that they had kind of different expectations as to what was going on. But even for the Pharisees, those that were against him, they maybe had different expectations. For the people in the crowd who had no real context for Jesus, they didn't really know. They had maybe some expectations. And then for the people that were kind of close but not quite disciples, that were like, hey, I want to know about this, like, there were some expectation shifts. I don't know if you've ever been in one of those situations. I had one of them last night, actually. I was searching and hungry for an illustration, and then the Lord provided and gave me one. So last night, my son and I, Knox, we went to the Frozen Four, which is the Final Four for hockey. We watched the national championship for hockey. It was Western Michigan University against Boston University. And my son, huge Boston University fan. He talks often about how that's where he wants to go and play. Don't know when this happened. Don't know how it happened. But it's what he decided he wants to do. And he was so psyched. Like, we went there, we went through the fan fest, and we're playing, and he's finding Boston fans, and he's high-fiving them. He is so psyched, and he's ready. Like, Boston has been great in their trajectory of winning college national championships. Western Michigan, this was their first ever Frozen Four and first ever national championship appearance, and they're playing for that. And so Knox, he's so excited. He's built up this expectation. Again, if you've ever been in one of those situations, especially as like a 10-year-old kid, like, you build them up and you build them up and you build them up. Well, what I did not know is that I bought us tickets in the center of the Western Michigan student section, and it was aggressive. There was a lot of Anheuser-Busch products consumed. There was a lot of things that my son had never heard said in a public setting before. He leaned over me at one point, and he's like, I think we get it. They can stop chanting now. And it was a lot. But what was very funny is, so Knox came in with this huge expectation of, like, I'm going to be around my people, and I'm going to be cheering. I'm going to have so much fun. And then he was like, oh my gosh, I'm in enemy territory. He had to shift his expectations to what was going on. And what was quite fun is actually he befriended this guy next to us. He was a college student, a senior there. They became friends. And Knox had one of the sweetest moments. So Western Michigan ended up winning this game, first ever national championship. Knox was devastated, but he leaned over to this guy next to him, who was like in tears because he's so excited. He's like, hey, man, I just want you to know I'm so happy for you. And I was like, what a sweet kid moment. He was so happy. But if you've ever been in one of those moments, like, they're jarring, right? Like, I looked at Knox's face. He was beet red, like, as he was standing there. And it wasn't because he wasn't excited to be there. On the way home, he's like, this is so exciting. This is the best experience. I was so glad I was there. He was so even excited about being in the midst of that student section for the duration of the game. He loved the guy he got to talk to. But immediately he realized, he's like, do we need to find other seats? Like, are we going to get kicked out? Are they going to be mean to me? Like, this was not what I hoped for, planned, or expected. And that's what he was going for. And this is kind of what is happening within this Palm Sunday story. Like, I mean, they're preparing for, this is the Jewish people, the people that know of Jesus, the people that are kind of intrigued by Jesus, at least. They're like, this is the Messiah we've been promised. They are so excited because he's going to come in, and he's going to come in kind of a way that's going to restore them in the way. And Alex set this up really great. Like, they were under Roman oppression. They were under Rome's thumb. And so they were expecting not just a leader that was going to spiritually liberate them, but there was like a militaristic liberation that was coming. They were under Roman oppression, and they were expecting that this king was going to come in, this Jesus was going to come in, and he was going to fix all of their problems in a spiritual, but ultimately in a very political sort of way. There was heavy taxes, heavy oppression, military brutality, all sorts of things happening under this sort of rule. And then they had places like Isaiah and Daniel and other places in the Old Testament that prophesied about the coming Messiah, one that was going to restore them, going to put them up with all their enemies were going to be at their feet. We were going to be in this place where they were going to be at the seat of prominence and no longer oppressed, no longer pushed down, but ultimately they would be the ones in power. And as much as we like talk about equity and maybe pacifism or creating space for other people, like when you're beat up and beat down a lot, like sometimes our lens for what it looks like to be on the other side looks like just taking the seat of the person that was oppressing us, right? Like maybe we don't want to admit that, but that's a little bit where they were. We want it to be restored, but we just want to be in charge for once. And so what's interesting, and I did not really know this, but like these palm branches, like often, have you ever been in a church like they bring palm branches in or they lay them on the ground? Like I was not fully aware of this till recently, that these palm branches were not just like a decoration. I mean, I knew that they weren't just a decoration that we just decided as the Christian church in America, but they were like a very political sign of Jewish nationalism. That was what was going on here. And so they're laying these things down on the ground as kind of a political protest that their king is coming in and going to overthrow them. If you're interested in like nerding out on biblical history, you can look at the Maccabean revolt and revolution. This is kind of what they're calling back to as they're looking at this. But as they're saying Hosanna, what they're saying is like down with the king or down with Rome, long live the king. That's kind of what we're saying about like their king in Jesus, like down with Rome. It's this kind of nationalistic idea that's going on. And Hosanna, if you were here for the first song we started saying, Hosanna was the phrase that they kept on singing and saying, which means like save us, please, in Hebrew. So they're like continuing is coming in, they're saying Hosanna in the highest, like save us, please, save us from our oppression, save us from our captors, save us from the people that are pushing us down, save us from being on the bottom side of history, like save us from all the things in the ways that life is going. Like they're praying to be delivered and removed and restored. And it's in some ways a prayer, and in many ways it's also like their political slogan. Like they were saying, like, save us, restore us, put us at the top, like put us back in a place of prominence, back above Rome, so that we might be in this place. And I think like the crowd, many of us, like when we're there, like what we see happening here is like they see the problem in front of them. Like they are oppressed, they are pushed down, they are pushed to the side, kind of these external problems, real, legitimate, heavy problems, but external problems that are swirling around, and they're looking for Jesus to fix them with kind of external solutions. And as they're saying Hosanna, like please save us, they're looking for this external solution to come in this. And I go back to the hockey game. There was a point, Knox didn't say, Dad, please save me. But I got that look like several times during this game. Like he would look, he was like, my external situation, I'm like drowning among these people right now. And like it was very cute. He came up with as many excuses to try to move as possible. He's like, well, I can't see over these people. Or like, you know, like they're waving their hands. Like everyone's waving their hands. But he's like trying to come up with as many solutions as he could with exterior problems and exterior solutions to fix what was going on within this. But what is interesting again is Jesus is coming in, and Alex set this up. Like when they would have imagined what they would have been coming in like, and what a king would come in like, and a military king would come in like, it wouldn't have looked like a guy on a donkey, right? Like having these like palm branches laid out, even if they were making a political statement. What's interesting is like Pilate would have come in not long before this, like a week or two before, maybe a couple of days. He came in a military entrance. So it's like he's led in by, he's the governor of Rome, if you don't know, so there's this area. And so Pontius Pilate comes in, the person that is going to be the one that puts Jesus on trial later on in this passion story. And as he's coming in, he's led in on a giant horse, a stallion, right? And there's Roman soldiers and there's people and they're celebrating, they're cheering, and there's this big pomp and circumstance that's going on. Kind of symbolizing like this horse, like war, dominance, prestige. Like he's sitting high, right? He's coming in this gate, and then Jesus comes in, and he comes in a complete opposite way. Like there's people cheering, and there's people excited. There are people singing and praising and saying, "Please save us!" Like there's excitement for sure. It's not a dull roar going on, but the posture that he comes in is very, very different, right? This donkey that he comes in on, symbolizing like humility, peace, service. Like it looks way different. Even if you like juxtapose and put those two things next to each other, right? Like, and you had to choose which one was more powerful, you know which you would choose. If you want to choose which one you'd probably ride in on, you'd probably choose the horse because it looks like a more powerful, dominant thing to ride in on. And Jesus doesn't choose any of those things, but he comes in on this donkey. And I think like there's this perception, at least would have been a Roman perception, that like, man, this Jesus guy is quite weak, right? Like we just saw our king, we just saw our leader, like our governor come in power and prestige, and there would have been this idea that perhaps he was weak. And for sure, the Pharisees, who were like looking for reasons to condemn him, they're probably psyched that he's not coming in big power. But they also would have used the thing they were excited about to condemn him. Like you can't even like come in on a horse. He's coming in on a donkey. He can't come in with a big crowd. Like he's got just a few people around him. But what Jesus was doing in this moment was not at all being weak. I think he's making like a pretty big and profound theological protest about what it looks like to be the person that is going to save people, what it looks like to be in a relationship with a God that is actively trying to rescue God's people. Like he was making a theological stand and a protest, kind of a counter procession to the to the one that had just happened with Pilate. Like he is looking at what had just happened, and I think he's saying, like, I would have to imagine that Jesus made calculated decisions. Like things did not happen by accident. He's looking at what he just saw, and he said, what can be the way that looks so counter to this and actually elevates my values and my kingdom and my power in a way that looks nothing like what the world says kingdom and power and prestige looks like. Again, there's peasants in cloaks and palms on a borrowed donkey, like not even his own donkey. Like he's coming in on someone else's donkey. He's coming in, looks very different. Pilate comes in with soldiers, banners, war horses, like a military spectacle is swirling around. And in many ways, like this is just political theater that's going on, both for even for Jesus, right? Like he is like looking at what he saw and he's asking how he can get on the other side, but he's trying to make a statement about how the kingdom would come and what the kingdom would look like. But again, for many of us, like whether it's we come to this space brand new to religion, like some of us have come in and even like talking about Palm Sunday or Easter or Good Friday or Holy Thursday or Ash Wednesday that we did at the start of the year, like I don't know any of those things. Like none of those stories have any significance to me. I don't know any of that. Like it's all brand new. Maybe you're someone that like has like deconstruction, like you grew up in your faith. Like I've known all these stories. I know them in and out. I could say the prayers. I could cite the verses. I've heard a million sermons on this, right? Like I've done all of these things. Maybe you're there. Maybe you're someone that knows them all, but you haven't deconstructed. You're like holding on to them faithfully and happily, and there's nothing to really unpack or change or shift. Like all of us, I think, come in with different seats at the table, still around the same table, but looking from different perspectives and vantage points at this similar situation that we would call our faith. And this juxtaposition of Pilate entering and Jesus entering, and this shift in perspective and this shift in expectations, at least in my mind, begged the question all week of like, how have I had to shift my expectations of what the kingdom of God looks like? Like, how have I had to shift my expectations of what redemption looks like? Where have I had to like shift my expectations about God's presence in my life and what God's power in my life looks like? I'm like a Western American person, right? Like I see power the way many of you probably see power, and it doesn't often look like the way that Jesus portrays it. And so this is a little bit more of a like put yourself in their shoes situation. So if you've ever done improv, this is a great time to work on your yes-anding. But what I would say is you could, I want you to like really try to put yourself in the shoes of the people in this situation, like the people that were there, and pretend as if you were maybe just present at Pilate's kind of coronation as he walks in, like you had just watched that. You had saw the war horse and the banners and the procession and the celebration happening, and then juxtapose that with like, hey, you also attended Jesus's, and it looks a little different. Like there's no carpet rolled out, but there's palms on the ground, and there's people kind of saying their political slogan, Hosanna in the highest, Jesus, please save us. It's not a horse, but it's a donkey. Like, and kind of juxtapose those together. And I want you to really imagine, like, what would you have done in that situation? Like, how would you have consumed that? Like, would you have been someone that said, like, man, I'm open to having my expectations shifted? Maybe you'd be like, I sometimes wonder, like, what I would do. Like, would I just drag my heels in and be like, I came in with my expectations and I'm leaving with my expectations? Like, that could be legit too. Like, many of us, I think, do that. At least being self-aware, that's probably what I do more times than not. And so if you would turn to someone and maybe take 60 seconds, and like, if you were in that situation, what do you think you would do with your expectations? Would you hold them lightly, loosely? Would you drag your heels in? Would you give them up? Like, how would you kind of juxtapose those two situations as it related to your expectations? So take a moment, we'll come back together. So as you take your time to wind down your conversations, what's kind of interesting about this is that there was an expectation shift that happened in the entry, right? That's what we talked about on Palm Sunday. But it like started a domino effect of expectation shifts that happen. And again, the passage that we have for today, if you want to go back and read, it's out of John 12. And at the end of it, in verse about 13, it says that again, his disciples didn't even understand what was happening till it was already over. And we see that with disciples like Peter, who denied Jesus, and he's like, "I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it." And he denies Jesus, and he continues to do that. But there's this continued pursuit of shifting expectations that I think Jesus is on, and we see this in the way he enters. We see that his um, trial before Pilate goes somewhat similar. He's like, Pontius Pilate is like, you know what, you can just save yourself if you just say, and he's like, doesn't do it. And then they switch who they hand over, and he goes and he gets beaten, and he doesn't really fight back, and he doesn't do all that. And what turns to like this kind of initial hope of resurrection and restoration for the people around, they're like, this is not looking great for us. And like Jesus is getting closer to his death, and it's marching and marching and marching for that. But what's interesting is like every moment that Jesus got closer to the cross, I would suspect that the disciples, the closest to him, but even like the periphery crowd, are like just waiting for this like moment of turnaround. And if you've ever like clung on hope, and again, in this hockey game we're at, like they kept getting further away. Boston kept getting further and further behind. And Knox is one of my favorite people to watch sports with and watch play sports because he is convinced, no matter the deficit and no matter the time on the clock, that he can win the game. I remember coaching a basketball game and we were losing, and this is not an exaggeration, 65-0. And Knox held it together. And then the whistle blew and the game was over and he just started bawling. And I was like, did you not know we were going to lose that game? Did you not know that's where this was heading? But he had hope the entire time, right? And I would say the disciples had the same thing. Like they had hope the entire time. Something that if that is you, cling on to that. Like we need more people that have hope the entire time. Like I think we need that. And it's something we're trying to keep into Knox, like to play the game, to play life, to participate with hope. And so even the disciples, like now we might say like that's naive because we know the whole story, but they clung on to hope even in spite of the data telling them there wasn't hope. But it gets closer, like Jesus does not ever turn around. He continues to march forward closer towards his death. And what kind of starts as like this Sunday praise turns into what we will celebrate later this week on Good Friday of his death and his crucifixion on the cross. And so it goes from like triumph to the opposite of that pretty quickly. And again, for the people that are around, we hit this passage last week, like looking at the cross as a sign of hope and resurrection is foolishness to pretty much anyone, right? Like the cross symbolizes pain and death and oppression, execution, state power. It embodied pretty much everything that Jesus did not stand for and everything that he preached his kingdom would be. And that's where Jesus ends in this Good Friday story before we get to Easter. And so if you don't know the Good Friday story, I would invite you to for sure come in to join us on Good Friday as we get to celebrate and sit in that awkward tension as we prepare for that. But what Jesus is doing in this moment, I would say from Palm Sunday today up into Easter, is he's doing this shifting of redefining what a lot of things look like and ultimately what victory looks like. Because to everyone that was on Team Jesus, they were losing. Every single moment of this, people that found power in Jesus' teachings, people that watched him raise people like Lazarus from the dead, people that watched him walk on water, they saw miracles happen. They heard amazing teachings. They heard things that were transformative to their heart, mind, and soul. And ultimately, they're like, can we even still win with that power and that person with us? And Jesus is redefining what power can look like. And so as we sit between, sometimes we jump too quick to the celebrations at Easter. And from today, and I would encourage you to join us on Good Friday if you don't have plans to come and to join us at 7 and to join us on Easter, to sit in the totality of the story. Like they didn't know where it was going. We have the benefit of knowing where it's going to go. And I'm that kind of person that if I'm going to read a book or watch a movie, I will often Wikipedia the plot because I'm too impatient. I want to like know where it's going. They didn't know what the plot was, right? Like they didn't know where it was going. They didn't know the story. They sat in it. And that meant that they cried. And that meant they wept. And that meant they mourned. And that meant that they celebrated when Jesus came in. And that meant that when things turned, they wondered. That means they denied and they ran away and they were full of shame. and that ultimately at the end of it, they experienced hope and restoration and redemption. But there wasn't a certainty that that would come, at least for them. They sat in the awkwardness, in the tension, in the silence, and in the pain. And sometimes we jump to the good news. And I love the good news. That's why I do this. I love the good news. But my challenge for us as we go from Palm Sunday through Good Friday up to Easter Sunday is to sit in the tension that comes with us and comes with this season. And to see all the things that Jesus is doing in us as not wasted moments. I think for some people in the story that Jesus was living in that moment, they might have said, like, well, that was a wasted moment because it didn't go the way I expected it to go. But Jesus used very unexpected and what were seemingly wasted moments to curate a story that was far greater than they could ever imagine. And this week, that's what I hope for each and every one of us, is that we experience the hope and the good news that does come on Easter in ways that we never expected as the story hits us in different and profound ways. So with that in mind, would you pray with me? God, I do thank you that you come in ways that are so unexpected. Whether it's through your entry into the world through a baby in a manger in a cave in the middle of a nowhere town to a nobody family, or coming into a town not with power and prestige, but in humility and kindness and in ways that the world would not even receive as majesty and kingdom, but your kingdom is restored in all the same way. And so, God, be with us this week as we continue to worship today and prepare our hearts to move closer to the story on Easter, to celebrate wholeheartedly, but to sit in the tension, to have our expectations shifted, to perhaps see you through the prism of our life and faith in ways that we never imagined possible. And help the songs that we sing, the communion we receive, all be moments to see you in different lights and different lenses. And so be with us as we continue to worship, prepare our hearts for communion. Pray us all in Jesus' name. Amen.